All right, you guys, I am on today with Dr. Vonda Wright. Thank you, Dr. Wright. Do you want me to just call you Dr. Wright or Dr. Vonda? You have Dr. Vonda up.
You can call me Dr. Vonda.
All right, Dr. Vonda, I'm going to give her a little introduction here. I went over it with her before we got started because there's so many things that I could say about her that are wonderful, but let me just sum it up real quick. Dr. Vonda Wright is a double board certified fellowship trained orthopedic surgeon and internationally recognized authority on active aging and mobility. She cares for professional athletes of the NFL, PGA, World Rugby, the Pittsburgh and Atlanta Ballet Theaters, as well as collegiate and elite masters competitors and ordinary people just like us.
Yeah.
She's written 5 books in the fitness and performance space, and she has I'm going to let her kind of talk about this too. So she's done lots of research. She spent her whole life doing this stuff, but I asked her where she was practicing now. I'm going to kind of let her talk about that because she's in Florida. So go ahead and let us know like where you're at today in your practice.
Yeah, you know what you're describing is actually a long career, right? So I spent 20 years at the University of Pittsburgh, where I was the medical director of the UPMC Lemieux Sports Complex, which was a joint venture between the Pittsburgh Penguins and our faculty. So that was really great. And then moved to Atlanta. And now I'm in private practice in Orlando, but in a special place in Orlando called Lake Nona, where the entire community is built on the concepts of medicine, innovation, and sports. And so it's a perfect place to bring my not only my elite sports medicine practice, but really the research I've done across my career in musculoskeletal aging and longevity. So it's a good final resting place for my career.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I was just telling her before we got on here my 15-minute story of myself, because it's kind of a funny space when she's very active on Instagram, social media, that kind of thing. So if you're not following her, make sure you go follow her because that's literally how I got to know who she was. You do a lot of lives. You're very real and vulnerable in your posts. And I think that's what, again, not to be weird, but that makes me love you so much and just feel so connected. And I think that's really what's missing in the social media space. So go follow her if you want a real person that's doing real things. So
Dr. Vonda Wright. You gotta search a little bit if you don't see me initially, but Dr. Vonda Wright.
Yes, and you won't miss her. She's all over the place. So I wanted to talk about a lot of different things. But first, I love to again hear about some of the people that I love to have come on and why you got started and what you're doing today. So what's a little backstory on Dr. Vonda and what drives your passion to do what you do today? I know you were a nurse for a long time, and then you moved into becoming an orthopedic surgeon. So kind of what made you want to become a nurse in the area that you did? And then what made you decide you wanted to get into orthopedic surgery, and then even now where you're at today?
Okay, well,
what drove you to be where you are today? I want to know.
It's not really a short answer. So if you want to spend our time doing that, I'm so happy to talk about it. So I went to a Christian liberal arts college called Wheaton College in Chicago and I came out with a biology degree. And any of you who have a bachelor's degree in a science, you know that usually you have to go get a graduate degree to get a job because frankly, there's not much to do with a biology degree other than be a really curious person. So when I came out, there was a huge shortage of nurses. So within 3 years, I got another bachelor's degree in nursing and a master's degree in cancer nursing. And for a few years, I was the nurse on the floor that pushed chemo. At the time, cancer care was much less effective than it is now. And so the way it worked was the people who came to get care would come spend a week in the hospital every single month for 6 months. And the design of the care at that point was called primary nursing. Any of your listeners who are nursing are now practicing team nursing, where there's one nurse, probably several nurses assistants, a bunch of helpers, and she may be responsible for 10 people. When I was a nurse, it was called primary, which means every time the person came into the hospital, I took care of them. I only had 4 people to take care of, and we developed a 6-month relationship. And for me, that, and I was only 23 when I started doing that, that had a pivotal impact on my life in a variety of ways. It helped me really have a deep understanding of human nature and our will to survive. It helped me understand what was important in life and what wasn't. Like if you come to my house in Florida, we're only the second owner of this house, but I left the other lady's curtains up because frankly, I don't give a rat's ass about a lot of the stuff that we get really excited about in life. It's not to say it's not important to people, but it's not that important to me because my formative years I spent at the bedside of dying women who taught me that life is precious and worth fighting for. It also taught me, because of primary nursing, to take care of the whole person. So the way my orthopedic practice differs from there, I'm sorry you keep hearing blinging. If you do,
That's okay.
there is a watch on social media in the next week. There is a huge debate going on right now on menopause care, and all the experts in my menopause here are blowing up. So I apologize.
Wow.
Yeah, but being a cancer nurse at the bedside of dying, largely women who are fighting for the fight of their lives, it taught me to be a whole person doctor, even as an orthopedic surgeon. Because if you've been to an orthopedic surgeon, bless their hearts, sometimes they're just focused on one joint at a time, and you're just in need of them. And
Yeah.
you know that's okay for them. That's not okay for me.
Mm-hmm.
So it also not only taught me to be a whole person doctor, but I'm a much better doctor than I am because I was a cancer nurse than I would have been, because I can be very focused and very driven. So very quickly, I was promoted and helped run the Rush Cancer Institute and needed to decide what to do next. And at 28, I needed to decide where to go because I had learned everything I was going to learn from being a nurse, I felt. And so I had many options. I could go straight into research. I could go into business. I was offered some business jobs. Or if I wanted to do research and take care of people, being a doctor is a great route for that. Not realizing that, not thinking through that by the time I got done with my 11-year orthopedic training, because that's how long it takes,
Wow.
that I would be nearly 40. And
Yeah.
so I spent my entire youth, honestly, training to become an orthopedic surgeon. And when I did, I was privileged to go to University of Pittsburgh for my residency. It's one of the best places in the country. Very privileged to go to Hospital of Special Surgery in New York for my fellowship, which is the #1 orthopedic hospital in the world, and then come back as faculty to Pitt. So when I got back to Pitt, I decided to do my research in musculoskeletal aging because I had seen so many examples. Not only my father, who currently is 84, but was an endurance athlete my whole life.
Mm-hmm.
I had seen so many examples of people that were thriving long into life that I never believed, never for 1 second, that aging was an inevitable decline from the vitality of youth down some slippery slope and that there was nothing you could do about it. So I decided to test that hypothesis, because when we look at research about what happens to us as we age, it's usually population research, meaning they just take a group of people, they watch what happens to them over 10 or 20 years and say, oh, when you age, these 9 things happen. But what do we know about the population in the United States? 70% of people in this country do not do 1 second of mobility a day. They get up, they get in their cars, they sit at their desks, they come home, they eat uh, food that makes their bodies a trash compactor, and they rinse and repeat.
Yeah.
Only 30% of people in this country invest in their mobility every day. So what does that tell us about the aging research? It tells us that it is reflective of a population of sedentary people. It did not tell us what was possible if we take the variable of aging away, of sedentary living away. So that's what my research and the research of my group, which is called PRIMA, the Performance and Research Initiative for Masters Athletes. We studied active people, not pro athletes, but athletes like you and I who invest in our mobility every single day. And what I found over a series of 15 years and multiple studies was that, in summary, we can save our brains, our muscle, our bones. We can save our muscle not only at a tissue level, through the very famous illustration that I published that shows the 70-year-old, the 40-year-old triathlete, the 74-year-old sedentary person, and the 70-year-old triathlete. It's these three pictures that look like three steaks.
I've seen it. Yeah.
It has been lifted from my paper and posted everywhere. I mean, I go into multiple gyms and it's hanging on a wall.
Yeah, it's
and
amazing.
I just want people to know my team spent 5 years on that study, and you need to cite us.
Yeah.
I get really riled up. It's you're welcome to use our data. You need to cite us as the discoverers of that. So anyway, so we took all of this data, and the truth of the matter is, the public doesn't read scientific research. And so the reason I started writing these 5 books that are consumer facing and going on the public media and talking from stages is because my mission is to change the way we age in this country, because we are not destined to go from the vitality of youth down a slippery slope unless we choose to. We have the agency to make choices 1,440 times a day. That's how many minutes there are that can positively affect the trajectory of our health. If you've been watching me lately, you've seen me talk, and I think I posted it yesterday, about it's not actually about aging. It's not actually about longevity. Lots of the bros out there are talking about, mostly men, that's why I call it bros, are talking about longevity and, oh my God, we can live 120 years and what's our life expectancy? And that's fine. But the real question is, what is our health span?
Right.
Because there are data that show that we can, right now, men live to 76, women live to 80, but only 62 years of that is in any kind of relative health, which means we spent 20 years going to doctors 3 times a week and dying, unless we make these choices that I'm talking about every single day. Now, listen, we have the agency to make these choices no matter what our socioeconomic status is. We can still walk. We can still eat nutritious food. And so what I ask people to do is harness the power of our agency, our ability to make choices, to make the choices that will make our health span equal to our lifespan.
Yeah.
We have a fabulous, fabulous example of how to do that and how I want to die in Queen Elizabeth. On Tuesday, she visited the Prime Minister. On Thursday, she just went to sleep and didn't wake up.
Yeah.
Let's do it that way.
Yeah. Yeah. And you do, I think you hear, and I hear you talk about this all the time too, in regards to aging. And again, this is another reason why I love Dr. Vonda, is because she doesn't take no for an answer. And she sees something where she's like, no, there's got to be another way. Like that's exactly my attitude in a lot of things. And I'm like you, where you are very much a coach in your practice with your patients that you talk to. I hear you talk that way. And I'm like, yeah, because you get on there and you're like, I have been in this space for 30 years, and I've been in it for 25, and I hear an excuse and I got an answer for you. I got an answer why you can do something, whether it's move your arm or sit up and down in a chair 5 times every hour, you can do something. So I love that you do that in regards to aging, but I feel like, and you've talked about this a lot, especially women, some men, but I think with women, I feel like we're a little more aware of what goes on in our body sometimes. And, and they just say, I'm 45 and I'm just falling apart. And then they just accept that. And they're like, well, when my mom was this age, she had to start seeing a doctor, and then she had to slow down, and it just kind of trickles down. So, that's one reason why I love listening to you, because you're like, no, that doesn't have to be that way. And these things that you're talking about are helping people age differently.
Yes.
Yeah. Through, you call it your one pill, which is mobility.
I have called it that, right?
And your one pill that you said fights chronic diseases that we die from, and it is mobility. And can you define what mobility is for those that might not understand the term mobility?
I don't think it has to have a complicated meaning. There's a reason that we were created with our strongest muscles below our belly buttons, right? If we were meant to be sedentary, we would have been created that way, like mushrooms, right? Mushrooms are meant to sit on the ground with a sessile stalk. And if we as humans were meant to be that way, we would be shaped like Jabba the Hutt. But no, we are shaped with our strongest muscles below our belly button. So the most natural way to be is mobile. So, and the fact of the matter is, it doesn't really take any training, does it? We have all walked since we were 1 year old. So it can be as easy as walking every day, 8,000 steps or whatever the new number is, whatever, fidgeting all day, or it can be as complex as bodybuilding, right? So when I started writing books, I was prescribing functional weight bearing, body weight motions. I would design programs for 6 months that progressively got harder and harder and harder, but we're all functional. I mean, I am still not a fan of machines.
Yeah.
So now what I prescribe is for people starting out, still motion, still body weight, until you understand your body, until you lay down some neuromuscular pathways so you can actually make your body perform in the way your brain is thinking. But now, especially for midlife women, I insist that we lift heavy, we lift low reps, high weights for the compound motions. And then for the accessory type motions, we lift 8 reps. For my women, I mean, and I'm not a lifter like you are, but I never ask them to lift 14 to 15. I mean, I think it's a waste of time. It's like trashy workout. You have to know why you're working out. I am working out for longevity and power, strength of motion, right? Because what happens if we are not powerful when we age? We'll fall down from a standing position in our kitchens and break our hips. If you break your hip, 50% of you will not return to pre-fall function, and a third of you will die. And I'm not kidding, because I take trauma call and I see it, and that's the real data. So what are we lifting for? The people that I'm guiding are lifting for longevity and power.
And longevity and power. And I post about this a lot because I'm kind of in the internet fitness space at this time, and I've kind of merged over in that space. And I think when I was in my 20s and I looked my best and I was winning competitions and had 6-pack abs, which my body does not like to have 6-pack abs. But when I could have told anybody anything and they would have listened. So it's really hard, I think, in the fitness space sometimes. And I do try to kind of preach the message of, like you said, health span versus lifespan, and lifting for the purpose of being strong. Because when we go into it with an aesthetic goal, we miss so many marks of what you're saying is being strong. Because being strong not only means being able to function daily, but it also means you asked me about my bone density a little bit before we got on here. It also allows you to have strong bones. So I want to talk about that a little bit, because I think even with my own clients and even my patients in the cardiac clinic, I talk about that a lot, and people don't recognize that having strong muscles means you're getting stronger bones. So can you talk about that a little bit?
I can, but before I go there, I want to talk about, I realize that probably many of your followings are probably in a fitness and aesthetic space, but even for most of my following who is not, lifting is still the only way to recompose your body. Dieting will make you skinny, but dieting alone will not make you lean. And it's incredible. It's easy to become skinny fat, where your body composition is still mostly fat, even though you look thin, right? So I think it's an important message that, lifting for power doesn't mean you're power lifting for like the Olympics, right? It means for power in life. But what will happen for women in midlife who gain 30 pounds and do not like not having a waist anymore and not having any definition, if they ever had definition, the only way to change your body composition is to lift weights.
Yeah.
Right. Because you'll do a certain amount by food, but you won't become
Yeah.
lean.
And I don't say that to say that there's anything wrong with aesthetic goals, because Lord knows I like to look good.
No. Listen, I'm as vain and I want to look good too, right?
Yes,
And
please.
I take
Sign me up.
pictures. But I just wanted any of my listeners to know that because they'll scoff at, sometimes people reject the aesthetic because they feel like they can never get there, right? I'm not doing that. I'm saying for my women who want to lose the 30 pounds of midlife menopause weight that you're going to gain, lifting is the only way to do it, in my opinion. So, but now bones. Yeah. So I sometimes have my people stand in front of the mirror and actually notice their bones, like, oh, look at your clavicles, or look at your ulna on your wrist, right? Or feel your hip bones, because bones are silent until they're screaming when they fracture. A fracture is incredibly life-changing pain. So, but you'll never know about your bones until that happens. So let's avoid that. So osteoporosis, which is loss of bone density, is also silent until you fracture. So even under recognizing that you have bones and they're a very large organ in your body, and that they replace themselves through a dynamic process every 10 years, is worth recognizing. So we can build bone a lot of ways. The best time to build bone is before you're 30, by running around and lifting heavy things and eating enough food and getting some sunlight. After 30, we either maintain or lose our bone density. And now we can rebuild some of it, but we'd rather start out with healthy bones than start out osteopenic and then have to build bone the rest of our life. So the way we build bone, even after 30, is the same way. It's lifting heavy, because that will not only put the axial load on your bones, which will stimulate them to be stronger, but it will also cause the muscle tendon unit to pull on the bones, which will cause the muscle to respond by laying down more bone. So that's impact. It's lifting both for the axial load and the muscle tendon unit. It's eating enough protein, 1 gram per ideal body weight, to supply your muscles and your bone, getting enough getting enough magnesium, having enough vitamin D, getting calcium in your diet.
So no calcium supplements.
No, not necessarily.
That was a big question.
In your diet. Those are the ways to build bone. So then what if you can't jump up and down 20 times a day, or jump rope like I like my people to do, to have the axial impact of impact exercising? What if you can't because you've destroyed your knees or you're already so osteoporotic? Well, the way NASA rehabs astronauts coming back from deep space or shallow space is on a trampoline. It's called rebounding. And so that's effective. There is a lot of newish data that shows that vibratory plates, whether it's strapped on your back or you're standing on it doing some of your lifting, is good for building bone. And literally, you can stimulate bone formation by jumping up and down 20 times. But let's clarify what's happening in midlife. People think, oh, we're not building bone anymore. Well, that's not true. Bone is built in a 5-step process, but I'll only tell you a couple steps. A bone cell called the osteoclast crawls around the surface of a bone. This is my funny, I found this in my office. This is a bone cell. Isn't that funny?
I love that.
An osteoclast, the bone breaking down cell, attaches itself to the end of the bone. It creates an acidic environment, and bone is I'm going to say leached away, is dissolved. That releases the micronutrients, the calcium, the all everything bone is made out of, so your body can use it. Bones are really a storehouse for
Yeah.
mineral. But then coming along behind that, in the 5-step process, are your osteoblasts, which will lay in that space and create new bone. When you lose your estrogen or don't make enough of it, you have a dysregulation of the breakdown and the build. So even in menopause, where women can lose up to 20% of their bone density rapidly,
Mm.
it's not because you're not building bone anymore. It's just that you are over resorbing it. The
Oh, yeah.
osteoblasts have an advantage over the osteoblasts. So that's a common misnomer. So if we can, through hormone replacement therapy,
Those are next questions. Yeah.
re-equalize the bone process, then let's do that.
Because you're saying that when you start to lose estrogen, it affects the bone.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's a
And
huge player in bone density.
I think there's so much, I think there's so much information now, which is wonderful. And I hear you talk a lot too. And this is why I'm very careful on who I follow on social media, because there is so much information, even doctors that you might see in person. We won't get started that whole conversation, but it's really hard to know who to trust and what to trust. So make sure you're following the correct people on social media, because we have so much information with that we have, but it's hard to kind of break it down and understand what to do, who to follow, what's actually right and wrong. But the lack of estrogen is affecting our bones, and this starts in perimenopause or menopause. You said it was menopause.
So remember I was talking about laying down bone until you're 30?
Yes.
So I call about 35
Mm-hmm.
when you're still having your periods. So, men, let's talk about men for 2 seconds. When boys, I got to see where my hands are. When boys go through, before they go through puberty, they don't have enough testosterone to exhibit male, all the men phenotype things.
Yeah.
But then they start producing testosterone. And now men and women have estrogen. It's a misnomer to say that estrogen's the woman's hormone, testosterone's the man's hormone. We both have both hormones. We just have them in different proportions. And so for men, they get their testosterone and it stays relatively steady their whole lives. And then may slowly decline when they're very old. Women, every single month, we have a wild fluctuation of our estrogen if we have enough body fat to produce it, right? Enough calories and body fat. So we always have fluctuations in our estrogen. But what happens in our mid 30s, this is why fertility becomes harder once you're about 35, is that we are born with all the eggs we're ever going to have in our ovaries. They're undeveloped.
Yeah.
But we have them all, millions of them. And every month when we ovulate, we lose about 11,000, such that by age 35, we have a fraction of the eggs we once had. And it is post-ovulatory. It is the whole ovulatory cycle that produces the different levels of estrogen that we have. So as we have less eggs and less ovulation, the hormones begin to fluctuate in a different way. It's not a steady uptick decline of estrogen and progesterone every month.
Yeah.
Right. So about 35, all the perimenopause can start to be at 35-ish when our fertility starts to be affected. By 45, most of us are in perimenopause, where we go through an estrogen dominant stage, we go through a progesterone stage, until on average, and it's in the perimenopausal stage leading up to 51, 52, which is the average age of menopause, which I will define. All the things you hear about, hot flashes, night sweats, brain fog, changes in body composition, plus 34 other things, really present themselves in perimenopause leading up to menopause. Menopause is the one day 366 days after your final period, that is your menopause. So before that, you're premenopausal, perimenopausal, then you're menopausal, and then you spend the next 40 years postmenopausal, right? Without estrogen at all.
Yeah.
Unless you take hormone therapy. So that is the life cycle of a woman's hormones in a brief, unsophisticated way.
Yeah.
But when estrogen drops, walks out the door precipitously, remember, men's hormones go like this. Women go like this until estrogen goes like this and never comes back. That's when we, for the bones, let's talk, because we started this conversation talking about bones, bone density and muscle mass drop precipitously. And so if we know this is coming, millennials, you're a millennial, millennials are turning at 42, 43. If you know this is coming.
Because we have so much information, so we get to learn from all of you all.
We're making it possible. The X's, I'm an X, Gen X, making it possible for you. Okay, if you've heard me enough, sorry, this is just the way I say it. You have a critical decade, 35 to 45-year-old women, to get your shit together. Can you please start lifting weights? Can you please start doing a little bit of impact exercise? Can you please start eating enough and knowing the content of your food? Because you are not a trash compactor. I don't care how easy it is to pick up the fluorescent package full of processed food. It's easy, but you need to turn that around and read how many grams of added sugar are in there. On average, an American will eat 16 pounds of added sugar a month.
Wow.
Because you just pick up a package and for whatever reason, there's sugar in your yogurt. I mean, so become more aware in the critical decade. Become more aware. Lay down some muscle while you still have your estrogen. Keep your bone while you still have some estrogen. Lay down a lifestyle, not a diet, a lifestyle of anti-inflammatory eating. And just be prepared, because you cannot stop your ovaries from retiring. You cannot.
Yeah.
In this critical decade, I want you to read Estrogen Matters by Avram Blooming and Carol Tavris. I want you to read the North American Menopause Society's statements on bone density and hormone therapy, so that you can have a science-driven discussion with your doctor about how you want to manage your midlife. Because I hold every person I take care of culpable. Just like you as a coach, you can coach all you want. You can teach how to lift. You can teach how to present on stage. You can even help people buy their friggin' bikini. But if they have the agency to take the information you've told them and make the decisions for themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. It's about educating. And I'm fully on board with that. I tell people all the time when they sign up for my online fitness programs, I'm like, if I could do it for you, I would charge a lot more. I would do it, but I would charge you a lot more money. Unfortunately, I can't. I can only tell you what to do. You have to take your own responsibility.
You must work for yourself. And here's the thing. I do say this a lot, usually at the end of a podcast, but there are lots of reasons, we talked about this before we got started, that people can come up with for not doing things. One of the things I have found, however, is that when you pivot your mindset to, I am worth this, I am worth the daily investment in my health, taking care of myself in the hard way that you and I suggest, which is lifting and zone 2 and nutrition that is not trash, it's harder than getting a massage, than buying a new purse, than being grateful, which are all ways that we do self-care, but we are not going to be health span extenders by massage imitation alone.
Right. Right. No, I love that. And so I wanted to talk about your zone 2. So one thing that I love about you is you walk to the gym. Sometimes you walk home and you're talking to us on the lives and you're answering a lot of questions. So Dr. Vonda is, again, active on Instagram a lot, and she is on there reading your questions, doing while she's doing her zone 2. So the zone 2 is basically something that you suggest, and that's just basically your walk, and that's your cardio. And how often do you suggest your zone 2? And I know you talk about sprint, so we can talk about that a little bit. So let's talk about the suggestions for, I know you want people to lift heavy. You want them to do that 3 days a week, or, whatever you recommend. So, and then your sprint, and then your zone 2 kind of cardio. And this is all kind of going into your health span and healthy bones and healthy muscle.
So let's talk a little bit about what I mean for some of you who love high intensity interval training 6 days a week, or love the brand that I used to go to every day for a while. I think Orange Theory is fun, but having our heart rates burning that high every single day as our primary source of aerobic is not how the pros do it. I'm just going to tell you. Tour de France champions train at base training, which is a low heart rate training for them. Why do they do that? Why should we do that? We are most metabolically efficient at lower heart rates, right? It is the lower heart rate training coupled with a couple time a week maximum effort, whether it's sprinting, whether it's VO2 training, which I'll explain, that contributes to our health span. I'm going to tell you, as your orthopedic surgeon, 6 or 7 days a week of high intensity interval training is going to wear you out, stress you out, and it's going to land you in my Monday morning weekend warrior clinic more often than you'd like, hurt. And then you're going to spend 3 weeks resting, which is the wrong approach, but you're going to be told to rest. And then your brain is not going to get its hit of dopamine every day, and you're going to be in a bad mood for 3 weeks. It is.
Yes, that's worse.
I'm not making this up. This is exactly what happens. And so zone 2 is the most metabolically efficient zone, where you are predominantly burning fat as fuel. Remember, when we are exercising, our fuel comes from a little organelle in our cell called the mitochondria, which is where the Krebs cycle, if you dig back in your physiology training, for all of you out there who are trainers, the Krebs cycle produces ATP as fuel for everything. Different fuel sources give you different amounts of ATP. Fat is the most efficient way to get energy. But when we speed up or put greater demand on our bodies, we speed up, we do high intensity, we need more ATP. Well, the burning fat is slow. It's efficient, but it's slow. So we start piling in the burning carbs, which are sugar, which are stored in our liver. And that's when we start producing lactic acid as a byproduct, which decreases our performance. And that's when we produce ATP faster, but not as much of it. And so to base train, to be most metabolically efficient, to burn fat, we need to do it at a lower heart rate. The way to find that is, in a lab, we prick your finger, and it's called the lactate threshold, where we can measure when you go from burning fat to when you start burning carbs. But if you don't have a lab, you can take 181 minus your age and estimate it. So, and work out at that. And then 3 hours a week. So broken up into
your heart rate. Right? 181 minus your age.
That's right. Sorry. Yes. That is the heart rate.
I just want to make sure that, I knew what you were saying, but I want to make sure we said
that's right. 181 minus your age is the heart rate zone for most people, zone 2, unless you're unless you're really, really fit, an endurance athlete. So then you do that 3 hours a week, broken up into minimum of 45-minute sessions. So 45 minutes to an hour. And then twice a week, you sprint, or maximum effort. Now, sprinting when I say that word, it freaks people out a little bit. Sprinting is just your maximum effort. My sprinting does not look like Usain Bolt sprinting, but it's fast for me. So, and when you do that, you can do it a lot of ways. I suggest to my people, for ease, After you're totally warmed up, you've done your zone 2, 30 seconds, as hard as you can go. So if I do my zone 2 at a 4, I do 4 incline, 4 on the speed for 45 minutes. Then I punch it up to 11, and I try not to fly off the back of the
You can run at 11. That's great. That's great.
Seconds. For 30 seconds. Yes, I can. And I'm 57.
That's
so
awesome.
Anybody can do it. 30 seconds, and then you totally recover. It takes me a couple minutes. You do that 4 times. And that will work on your upper zone 4 or 5. It'll work on your cardiovascular system. It will stimulate stem cell reproduction. It will make your mitochondria more flexible. And then if you want to work on your VO2 max, which is the single aerobic measure that predicts longevity, it's 3 minutes of your hardest effort and 3 minutes of recovery. So those are ways to affect your health span and longevity through your aerobic training.
So those are, you're going to do zone 2, and then 2 days a week you can do your HIIT
sprinting.
Okay.
Well, awesome. Not HIIT, but true sprinting.
Sprint. And then the other days are going to be your zone 2. So before I have to let you go, I want to make sure that we get some of our questions. So we wanted to make sure that you can make your dinner for your family. And that's what I love too. Okay. So really quickly, I want to say that not only is Dr. Vonda an incredible surgeon and coach and author and all of these things, you take care of your family, and you time block those things in. And it's very inspiring because you have all of these things going on, yet you always find the time to take care of yourself and your family, and to kind of create these boundaries and this mindset, just like you got into just a little bit. I know we don't have a lot of time to get into that, but I think it's one of your number one priorities is kind of the mindset going in. Just like you said, we are worth it. And then you said you saved that kind of towards the end, but it's kind of in the middle there. But you're worth feeling. You're worth feeling well, and that's something else that I could always get really teary-eyed when I talk to my own clients as well, and my patients, just because I've watched my own mom die because she didn't feel worthy and she never took care of herself. And and I see people that I love that are close to me that just don't feel that it's for them. They only feel like it's for somebody else. And it's just such a mindset thing. So something else I love about Dr. Vonda is that's top tier, is to make sure that you know that you are worth feeling well and you deserve to be healthy. So I just wanted to throw that in there and point that out to everybody that, she's like, I want to make time for my family and nurture my family and my time as well. It's just so important, right? We get caught up in all of these things and we want to do all of these things, but we can only do one step at a time, one day at a time. And you really nurture that mindset and, your family and stuff. So, really, really important to make sure you know that you're worth it and you're worthy and all of those things. But I did want to get to the questions because I posted a couple question boxes. So a lot of them had to do with, of course, menopause, hormone replacement therapy. Those could be big conversations. But a lot of them were, should I take calcium? Do I need to take vitamin D? Do I need to take K2? That was a lot of the questions. Supplements needed after menopause while on HRT. I'm just going to read these off real quick. You can kind of summarize what I think maybe you would think was kind of the best way to put those together. And then we had a lot of questions. A lot of those questions were they're like, we have so many questions. Like, I know. I guess what would be perimenopausal women and HRT, pros and cons, especially after breast cancer. There's breast cancer patients in here. And obviously we know that this is not medical advice. This is just Dr. Vonda giving you information to give to your doctor to make your best informed decisions and how to ask for help. We had questions about that. So let's talk about the HRT and kind of maybe what kind of hormones we should be testing going in or asking for.
So as you are in perimenopause and you're having all the manifestations that you do, number one, again, go in as an informed consumer. millennials, I did a bunch of market research to see how you guys want to be treated. And you seek out your own information. Go read Estrogen Matters. I'm not really kidding. So that you come in knowing the data. The data show, despite what the WHI has been debunked, show that HRT can help prevent cardiac disease, osteoporosis, loss of muscle mass. It can preserve the brain. And make you feel better, right?
Yeah.
So as you're feeling terrible, we do not dose hormones based on your labs because the body is such an incredibly homeostatic environment. If you draw your labs at 9 a.m., they'll be different at 11 p.m.
Yeah.
So we do it based on symptoms. So when I prescribe HT, I do it based on symptoms after taking a careful history, because even for women with a personal history of breast cancer, certainly a family history of breast cancer, when you weigh the risks and benefits, I think you will see, based on the data, that the benefits probably are going to outweigh the risks, so that you go into the decision not fearfully, surrounded by panic based on no data, but based with a calm assurance that the science has shown that the incremental risk is so little, less than 1 in 10,000, versus how much prevention and better you're going to feel, that many women who have had breast cancer take seriously the evaluation on a personal level and just don't throw themselves into a population of fear.
Yeah.
If you want specific data, then I love the doctors who specifically treat women who have had breast cancer or who themselves have had breast cancer and decide to take HT, such as Dr. Corinne Men, who sees patients privately and through My Alloys. So there are those resources that you'll have to seek out. Now, there are 3 kinds of estradiol forms. You can take a pill, such as Premarin, which is horse urine extract, which most of us don't suggest anymore. It's okay. It's worked for a very long time. Most of us prescribe transdermal estradiol, which is a patch that goes on your belly, and that bypasses the liver and does not carry the clot risk. None of us suggest pellets, actually. None of the menopause.
That was a question on here, so yeah.
Pellets will give you the hormones, but once it's under your skin, you can't control it.
Yeah, that's kind of scary. Yeah. Well, I said I feel like that's a little bit scary because you can't
control what it's doing. You can't take it out. You're stuck for 3 months. And my friends, it's very expensive and you don't have to spend that much money.
Yeah.
So that's estradiol. If you have a uterus, you must take progesterone, micronized progesterone, not compounded progesterone, micronized progesterone pills, either 200 milligrams 14 days a month or 100 milligrams every night. So those are the 2. You can add or subtract testosterone cream.
Would somebody take testosterone, just take testosterone? Is that ever something that women do, or do they
take it for libido, for muscle building? It's not approved for women, so it's off label. So you can't really suggest it, but women do. But let's go back to estradiol. There are also 3 applications how you take it: oral, transdermal, pellet. There are also 3 kinds. There is estradiol that works systemically. That's what the patch, the pellet, and the pill do. There is vaginal estrogen, which is a much lower dose that is put directly in your vagina and on your vulva. That is the cure for gynecourinary symptoms of menopause, the bladder infections, the atrophy, the dryness, the itching, and, my friends, can help preserve the pelvic floor. It is very common in CrossFit for these extraordinarily strong women who can do all the things with bars above their head to box jump and have incontinence. It is all over the internet because
we see it. Yeah.
yeah, the
Mhm.
pelvic floor muscles are not worked by anything we do with weightlifting unless we specifically focus on it. And two, need estrogen. So vaginal estrogen and the gynecourinary estrogen can help that. And number three, for 5 years, I've been putting estrogen in very low doses on my face because I reasoned to myself, well, if I'm absorbing in my skin and I need collagen on my face, why not put a little bit on my face? And oh, lo and behold, now there are 3 brands that carry facial estradiol to help with the
Wow.
collagen in your skin, in your face.
So do you like it, like, on your face? Have you noticed anything
I'm
or
57 years old and my skin's pretty darn good for being my
Yeah,
age.
I would put you maybe in your 40s,
Yeah,
so
right.
that
Yeah,
maybe, yeah, you're
yeah.
doing
So
pretty good.
my esthetician says, "What have you been doing with your face?" And I said, "I put estrogen on it." So
Yeah, it looks great. And then I want to talk about the frozen shoulder real quick. Maybe if we can even point somebody somewhere because I have one lady. She's actually a real dear friend of mine, old client, for 20 some years, and she said I definitely have frozen shoulder issues. She's had dry needling, and I know you talk a lot about frozen shoulder, and she's definitely either perimenopausal or menopausal for sure. And kind of talk about the frozen shoulder, maybe kind of what route to go.
frozen shoulder is an inflammatory process, whether you become highly inflamed because estrogen has walked out the door, or you're highly inflamed because you're diabetic, or you're highly inflamed because you eat a sugary diet.
Hmm.
All of those can give you frozen shoulder. So the way to treat it is first becoming anti-inflammatory, cut out the sugar, consider HT. Once you have a frozen shoulder, keep it moving, either with a physiotherapist or by yourself walking up the wall despite the pain. The primary motion that is lost first is the hooking your bra motion, the
Hmm.
apple. Yeah. So keep it moving. Anti-inflame, consider HT, keep it moving, go to your orthopod. If it's so bad you can't take it, get a steroid injection to calm it down so that you can then go directly to therapy, keep it moving. I've started using platelet-rich plasma, which is a huge anti-inflammatory to decrease the microenvironment. And then if you've tried all those things, and this can last for a couple years and you just can't take it, I will take you to the operating room. I will put you to sleep and I will move it for you, which breaks up the scar bands that form. And people get about 50% of their motion back, which really jump starts the recovery. Now, I
Yeah.
wanted to clarify, people all the time ask me, um, oh, I have a rotator cuff, but you're telling me it's a frozen shoulder. No, actually, you can have structural damage. 80% of all women have the musculoskeletal syndrome of menopause, of which frozen shoulder is one. 40% of the time, there will be no structural damage. Well, what does that mean? 60% of the time, there is something like a frozen shoulder can result, I mean, a rotator cuff tear can result in a frozen shoulder. So I
Yeah.
just didn't want people to think that every musculoskeletal thing that happens to you is due to menopause. Some of it is due to true
Could be
injury.
both. Yeah, could be both for sure. Yeah, those were kind of the most pressing questions. And of course, my husband's last question was to see, of course, what you thought of CrossFit.
Yeah. Well,
um,
if you want me to come back and talk
yeah.
specifically about CrossFit and how to protect your shoulders and
Yeah,
hips,
let's do that because there's a whole we want to talk about injury prevention as we age and
yeah.
all of that stuff because that's another huge, conversation that I'm obviously interested in. But I wanted to make sure that I honored everybody's questions
Yeah.
and got those answered for them
Yeah.
and lead them to you and they can kind of look around at all your stuff and
But I'll answer your husband's question. I am fascinated by the feats of strength that CrossFitters do. I watch the games.
Mhm.
I know all the Icelandic women whose names are their father's names. It's just
Yeah, yeah,
fascinating, right? But what I see in my clinic, your box is probably not like this, but I see in my clinic the results of people being in a box where the coach is not watching them.
yeah,
Because you have no mirrors. So mirrors are not for vanity. Mirrors are for form. So it requires, therefore, CrossFit coaches take that responsibility very seriously. Number one. Number two, I think the judgment of whether to push a client past exhaustion, people come to me when they're exhausted and try one more set because they can't control their form.
Yeah.
So if those things are being done, then I think CrossFit is fascinating. What I see are two main types of injuries. I mean, you can have traumatic injuries, but overuse injuries that come are things like a wide, I don't know if you can see this in the picture.
I can see what your arms are doing. Yeah.
Wide grip, ballistic motions. Because if you think about the anatomy of the shoulder that allows us to have tremendous motion is inherently unstable. You have a plate and you have a ball. There's no stability in that versus the hip, which is a cup and a ball. So in the shoulder, in a wide grip, past exhaustion, what happens is the humeral head slips forward and it rips off the anterior labrum and the biceps tendon that hooks into it. Right? So we destroy the front of our shoulders trying to do a really good thing, get as strong as a bull. I mean, amazing what can happen in a CrossFit gym. In fact, I had a 60-year-old woman who came into me just this Thursday. She's the most ripped looking person I've ever seen at her age. Her veins are sticking out. I'm like, oh, obviously you work out. And she's like, yes, I'm a CrossFitter. So it's amazing, but we got to protect our anterior shoulders.
Yeah.
The other thing I see, and it's hard to know if you have this, is some hips are not made to drop heavy and deep. They're not. Because the structure of the hip, the structure of the hip, the cup can be a plate, which again makes it inherently unstable. But that's why some dancers are so flexible. The cup can be medium, which is good. The head is stuck in there. Or it can be what we call a pincer, which is the cup is a circle. There is no motion. These people have flexion to 90. They have very little internal X rotation just naturally. Those people, when they get into a CrossFit gym and they put a heavy bar on and they drop deep and heavy past 90, what they're doing every single time is they're hitting their femur against their cup like this.
Yeah.
And they're tearing their labrum, they're delaminating their cartilage, and they're giving themselves early arthritis. So I am not at all opposed, but I think you got to know what your baseline motion of your hip is to know, or get an x-ray. What is the shape of my bones?
True.
Can I really drop deep and heavy, or do I need to stop at 90?
Yeah. And that could probably be a take home message for people working out at home too, is that, you know, everybody's hip structures are so different. And our squat stance can be different. I remember seeing one of my orthopedic surgeons that I love that actually has helped me a lot in my healing journey after dozens that I saw. And he's like, not everybody's going to have their legs lined directly with their shoulders. Like everybody's hips are so different. There's no exact way.
Right. I was not calling out CrossFit gyms, but since you have one, it's every person in a gym.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to make sure that everybody knew that that would be an at-home thing too, is that even though you're watching videos or doing the exercises, just because your instructor is going below 90 or their hips look different, that's okay. Like as long as you're still putting that load on and you feel good and you're in control. And I will add to that note, my old bodybuilding coach used to say, when you feel like you can do one more, don't. Because like, we're going to get hurt.
It's like on the ski slope. People tear their ACLs on the mountain when they just want one more run.
Yeah, don't do it. Just don't do that one more rep. Don't just put your ego to side and just leave it alone. Yeah. So anyway, I know we could go on and on, but the key points were make sure you're lifting, make sure you guys can follow her for this, but limit your sugar. She does sugar detoxes. I watched you on your Instagram kind of lead some people through. Make sure you are getting proper education for your health and hormones. And of course, your overall muscle and bone health, but they all kind of go together. Make sure you know you are worth it. You are worth feeling well. You do not have to age the way that generations did before us, you can age well, and make sure you take all the necessary steps. You know, I won't go through all of them
Don't
again, but
shame yourself. Yeah, don't shame
Mhm.
yourself. Yeah,
Yep, yep. And you have a lot more control and power than you think.
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Anything else you want to add to that, to the listeners?
I think we covered it's like a thesis of my life's work and
So
things
much.
that people ask me all the time. I do usually finish with remember your worth, the daily investment in your health, but also remember that there is never an age or skill level when
Yes.
your body will not respond to the good stress you put on it and adapt in an amazing way. So I would just love everybody in your group that's not following me to follow me on Dr. Vonda Wright. I
Yes,
offer a lot of free stuff all the time.
all the time.
I have a retreat coming up called Mastering Midlife. If you want
Yes, that's
all the tests that we do here to help you understand how your body works and build a better program. The next one is May 16th through 19th, and uh, email me or go on my Instagram to find out more information about that.
is that
And then
midlife mastery? Is
it's
that what it's
Midlife
called?
Mastery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Mhm.
we build educate you about midlife and build plans to master it. So it's a lot of fun. I mean,
Yeah,
we
I definitely want to come to one. You said you have 4 each year.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that is so much work, you guys. Listen, she's a practicing physician and she does all of this stuff. Okay. You have to be structured and motivated and just so fired up for life and your God given purpose here. I'm just so proud of you. And
Oh,
I don't know if anybody ever says that to you because people think that, everybody's got it all together. But I think you need to hear that, like us looking out, it's just like, oh, I'm so proud of her for helping all of us
thank you.
and just doing all the things because it does get tiring.
It's my pleasure.
Yeah, so we'll have to have you back on all about injury prevention
Do
and
it.
all of that stuff. You guys can find her. I'm not even going to say it. I'm just going to post it underneath the description here. Go find her on Instagram. But she's all over the place now that you know of her. Again, Dr. Vonda, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for coming on and talking to us.
It
All
is.
right.
It's my pleasure.